The Square and the Compass, Masonic Tools to Live By. Welcome. I'm a third degree Master Mason of the International Order of Freemasonry for Men and Women, Le Droit Humain, and that means human rights. I'm a member in Seattle of a triangle, and that is 3 Master Masons, versus a lodge requires 7 Master Masons. And I'm wearing my apron, and we have, it may not be visible, but we wear dark skirts or pants and then white tops. And our order of Freemasonry used to be called Co-Freemasonry. For years, women weren't admitted into the Masonic orders until Elizabeth Aldworth was initiated in Ireland in 1711. Her father was a Viscount and a Mason and conducted lodge meetings in his home. And Elizabeth was very interested in Masonry. She provided refreshments and would observe what was going on as much as she could see. And then is reported that she hid in a closet to know a little bit more about the ceremony. And so the master of the lodge, as well as all the Masons, thought it was good to initiate her. So she was initiated and eventually became master of the lodge. And that's basically the president of the lodge. It would take over 100 years before women could become active in Masonry, with Marie Durant, who was initiated into Freemasonry in 1882 by the Freethinkers Lodge. Because the lodge couldn't be part of the Grand Lodge anymore for admitting a woman, Marie resigned so the lodge could rejoin the Grand Lodge of England. 11 years later, she and Dr. George Martin, a senator and lawyer in Paris, started the first co-Masonic lodge from which Le Droit Humain grew. This was the first lodge to admit women equally with men. In 1902, Annie Besant, the second international president of the Theosophical Society, went to France and was initiated into the Le Droit Humain order. Other theosophists who were Masons are Radha Bernier, N. Sri Ram, C. Generajadasa, Joy Mills, and John Algeo, among many others. There are some exclusively women's orders. You can see that picture is kind of old, but then there's another picture, and I think this is a convention. And then this picture, these women have elected to wear the white gloves on their hands, and it's a sign of innocence and purity. Then here's a picture of a men's Masonic group with their aprons and sashes, and I believe these are the officers of the lodge. Well-known people who were Masons include George Washington, the first president of the United States. He was the master of his lodge. Then there's a wonderful George Washington Masonic National Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. And you can see the square and compass and the grounds. The tower was fashioned after an ancient lighthouse in Alexandria in Egypt. Then another picture of the memorial. And then the grounds from above, amazing grounds. Other Masonic buildings include the one in Seattle that was involved in the World's Fair in 1909. This building became part of the University of Washington. Another famous Masonic building is the Scottish Rite Temple in Washington, D.C. On Masonic buildings, the mason's tools of the square and the compass are often inscribed in the building. And you can see the couple more buildings with the square and the compass. Other tools or symbols are sometimes found in other areas of the building, such as the hammer or gavel, the chisel, and rule on this building in Leeds, England, and the gavel, chisel, and rule in Constantinople, and the compass is there on the upper right, and that's in Turkey. And then this level, plumb bob, and square on the building in New Haven, Connecticut. Other famous people have been Masons, such as Benjamin Franklin. And the quote there says, God grant that not only the love of liberty, but a thorough knowledge of the rights of man may pervade all the nations of the earth, so that a philosopher may set his foot anywhere on its surface and say, this is my country. And Paul Revere was a master of his lodge, and this is an ad in the newspaper telling of the next meeting. Winston Churchill was a Mason, and you can see the commemorative stamp, as well as on the postcard it describes when and where he was initiated. And then Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And his quote says, men are not prisoners of fate, but only prisoners of their own minds. Other Masons include John Hancock, one of our founding fathers, Mozart and Bach, Frederick the Great, the 18th century king of Prussia, and many kings, Davy Crockett, the frontiersman, and Presidents Harry Truman and Gerald Ford, among many presidents. And Sir Francis Bacon always had some symbol in his books that denoted he was a Mason. And in his book, The Advancement of Learning, published in 1624 in Paris, there's this emblem on the title page. So you can see the oval in the center that has a lot of white in it. And then below that is another oval with the initials IM, and that's referring to I am a Mason, an operative Mason. And that's over the emblem of the Guild of Operative Masons. So an operative Mason is an actual worker of stone versus the speculative Masons, which are people in a Masonic group that don't work with stone, but enjoy the philosophical meaning of Masonry. So what is Masonry? It's a fraternal organization which revolves around a ceremony that takes place each meeting. The term fraternal organization, with the brotherly connotation, applies to both genders since women are involved, but Masonry is an organization of camaraderie, mutual aid, and support for the members. This next slide shows an artifact of the Constitution or Rule Book for the London Masonic Lodges. In Masonry, people also come together because of the meaning of Masonry, as well as the ritual that takes place every meeting, which is powerful. Masonry has a spiritual aspect as well as an intellectual component when studying the meaning of the symbols. Lastly, there's a social aspect to it from enjoyment of being around like-minded people. Masons meet regularly, and the meeting may include lecture and discussion, as well as a business meeting. Also shared may be pieces of architecture, and that's the term used for a project or a paper done by members who want in advance to want to advance to a higher degree. Groups may have a lunch or dinner after the meeting. Into the 20th century, one of the side benefits to Masonry was the networking aspect for community or business leaders. In recent times, since there hasn't been the same need because of the internet, interest in Masonry now is due to the inherent rewards of being a Mason. Philanthropy is a key component of Masonry, and Masons may give financial aid to fellow Masons, and they also donate to charities or give scholarships to students. The Shriners, an organization like Masonry, support hospitals. Masonic orders exist around the world, but Muslim countries generally do not allow Masonry, even though Turkey and Morocco do. You can see the picture of the temple in Constantinople, Turkey. And then this picture of the Masonic temple in Casablanca, Morocco. And I got this picture off the internet, and it was really clearly showing that it was a Masonry building. Freemasons are equivalent to Masons. The reasons why Masons are called free may be varied, but some theories have been put forth that it's because of the freestone stone, which is a softer, stocky, chalky stone used for the capitals on the columns, versus the sturdier stone that would be used for walls or the columns itself. Another possibility for the use of the word free may be the way stonemasons needed to travel for their work. During the Middle Ages, when a king or a landowner commissioned a building to be constructed, they needed to hire many stonemasons from various places to work, who were then free to join the workers without having to be a part of the local guild. So this shows some guilds crests of the Middle Ages. So these traveling stonemasons were accepted because of the need for their skilled labor. And this is a picture of the charter for the Stonemasons Guild in France. So this picture shows the stonemasons again, and in the left picture, there's a compass that's drawing something on the ground. The guild system worked in this way. The lord of the manor or the area of land would grant a charter or permission to a group of entrepreneurs, they may be blacksmiths or shoemakers, to form a guild. And this picture shows shoemakers on the left, and then blacksmiths or metal workers in the other two pictures. The guild trains new members and controls the number of new practitioners who entered the trade. They also set prices to make a profit, keep up with the demand, and guarantee quality. The lord of the land benefited too by collecting taxes on the materials coming in and then the sale of the goods going out. This picture by Rembrandt is the inspectors of the Clothmakers Guild, and this was 1662. They were called the Drapers Guild. Guild members worked collectively, and if a ruler made unfair demands of a guild member, he would leave the job and all other guild members would also leave. That way the ruler then couldn't finish his work, and this was to help them have fair wages. In the Stonemasons Guild or Association, the workers began their training as an entered apprentice, then advanced to the level of journeyman or fellowcraft, and finally achieved the Master Mason degree. And you can see in this slide of modern Masons, the entered apprentices are in the front with the aprons that have a point at the top, signifying a pyramid or a triangle. Then the fellowcraft degree is in the man's with the gray suit, and that flap has been pulled down. So it's just a rectangular or square apron. And then the master masons have the white apron with the blue edges. And you can see the flap there is turned down also. At each level, the Masons are taught the passwords, signs, and secret handshakes for that degree. This was useful because when Masons moved from town to town, they were illiterate and could give the handshake to identify themselves that they were a stonemason. This also served to protect their seniority because each degree has its own handshake and passwords, which would identify them of being of that rank. Once the apprentice became a full-fledged builder, he was given a white lambskin apron, which identified him as a master mason. So you can see the various aprons that have been used and are used by workers today. And then here is the master mason's aprons, and they can be selected by the groups. Groups of stonemasons built the great cathedrals, such as Chartres or the cathedral in Notre Dame. And then this is a nighttime picture, beautiful picture. And then the cathedral in Germany, Frankfurt, Germany. Many roots of masonry have come from the craft of stone masonry, but they're also intertwined with the ancient mysteries, which go back into antiquity. The ancient mysteries, or the mystery schools, refer to teachings about spirituality brought forth by the periodic appearance of a world teacher who started a new religion or philosophy. And examples are Buddha, Jesus, Zoroaster, where Iran now is, Lao Tzu from China, and Hermes Trismegistus in Egypt. Charles W. Leadbeater wrote the book, The Hidden Life in Freemasonry, and he describes a past life review of the experience in 4000 before current era Egypt. At that time, everyone in Egypt knew about the mysteries, and thousands participated in the entry-level degree of Isis. This was the lesser mysteries which imparted to the masses, providing them with a simple moral code to live by. This might be similar to the 10 Commandments of Christianity or Judaism, thou shalt not kill or steal, or even the Noble Eightfold Path. The greater mysteries of the mystery schools referred to the esoteric doctrine given only at initiations and experience on the astral plane. This was for advanced students in the mystery schools. During the experience, the initiate's intuition was tested and his will challenged. If instruction proceeded, it covered in greater detail how the universe was created, how the laws of nature work, and the life in the angelic kingdom as examples. In order to participate in the greater mysteries, the students had to become part of the mystery schools to learn how to rise above their everyday minds to access the higher planes. The teachings in Masonry prepare a student for this. So this is a picture of initiation, and the person in the white with a blindfold has his knee made bare. He hasn't been injured. The Masonic rituals are partial reenactments of the trials that candidates go through at initiation into the mysteries. They help bring about a spiritual transformation in both the person being initiated as well as for members of the group. It's a very moving experience. The initiates of the Egyptian mysteries were symbolically engaged in building a perfect pyramid within themselves. So this slide shows the pyramid cut in half on the left with the ramp to the king's chamber where initiations took place. Masonry also emphasized erecting the temple within. And this is King Solomon's temple. And he was a ruler who built the first temple in Jerusalem in the 10th century before current era. Just as a mason cuts a stone that will fit perfectly together with other stones so the structure will be strong and stable, building the pyramid or temple within means we endeavor to be faultless in our thoughts, words, and deeds. Also, no one stone stands out from the others. They all have their rough edges removed and are sized together, just as a mason endeavors for himself to be a part of the group, equal. As we perfect ourselves, we symbolically smooth the rough ashlar or the square cut stone. The rough and smooth ashlars in the picture represents the imperfect human being in the rough ashlar, and then what we will become when our nature is purified, the perfect ashlar. The Masonic ritual evokes spiritual power that helps the members present as well as the surrounding community. It builds a powerful thought form of a light-filled temple that is shown in this picture from Leadbeater's book, The Hidden Life in Freemasonry. The placement of the people in the ritual, as well as what they say, evoke angels, nature spirits, and elementals, even if the Masons don't know what is happening. Music, with or without singing, harmonizes the Masons' minds, and incense calms their emotions. All of this helps to unlock aspects of the intuition. Just a note, because ritual is such a strong aid in meditation and spirituality, it is one of the fetters that a master needs to rise above when taking the 5th initiation to adeptship. He needs to engender the deep spiritual state from his own mind and higher mind. And this demonstrates the power of the ritual of which Masonry is a part. This picture shows the electromagnetic field of the heart, and one of our members, who was clairvoyant, described that during our ritual, our altar had the same electromagnetic waves moving around it, just like what HeartMath Institute discovered. Before the Masonic ritual, the apron is put on. This is symbolic of the way we change ourselves to open to the inner aspects of our spiritual nature. The apron also signifies that no one is of higher status than another, and which might be seen from clothing. Everyone wears basically the same attire. This shows the ancient Egyptian apron from one of the tombs, and the role of the apron's waistband is to cut off the lower part of the body at the solar plexus, the chakra there, to restrain the desires of the lower self. The apron, being a symbol of work, signifies the Mason's work is to improve himself and be of service to others. In the lodge, the work of each Mason is to make himself a perfect channel for the energy of the divine. And this shows the Egyptian apron from Leadbeater's book. This is a repeat of the previous picture of Masons, but it shows the aprons of the various degrees. You can see the entered apprentices with the square and the triangle, and the entire apron of the entered apprentices represents the pyramid with the square base and the triangles on the sides. The pyramid represents the 7 levels of consciousness within a human being, with the 3 corners of each triangle denoting the Trinity, or Atma, Buddhi, and Buddhi Manas, and the 4 corners of the square being the everyday self, the everyday mind, emotions, and the physical body and the instincts there. The flap of the entered apprentice is pinned upward to cover the undeveloped instincts, including his heart, because Masons may have heart's desires that consume his thoughts or include desires for himself. As the entered apprentice develops himself with study and by honing his emotions, such as the heart turned to others in heartfelt compassion, the next degree, fellowcraft, can be attained. Then the flap is turned downward, symbolizing the mind and the heart of the Mason has been purified. The apron, however, still protects the lower 4 sections or the quaternary of the mind, the emotions, the body, and its defenses. Elements of the lodge include a floor made of a mosaic pavement of black and white squares. And this symbolizes a duality in our world, the polarity. Also, lodge floors are often aligned with the north and south magnetic poles to contribute to the power of the ritual. And this can help evoke currents of energy from spiritual entities. Candles symbolize the sun or the deity associated with it, the solar logos. They are lit while reciting specific words similar to a prayer, and they're used symbolically to illumine our minds. The square placed over the compass, underneath the compass, means living on the square or being honest in things we do and living with integrity. The 4 edges of the square represents the 4 lower levels of consciousness that the apron covers. The triangle, depicted by the compass with an imaginary line extending across the 2 points, represents the person's higher self, or the Trinity. And that's the higher mind, the field of intuition, and the spark of the divine within. In the ritual, Masons walk at right angles, represented by the square and the tessellated floor of the black and white squares. And this makes a powerful vortex of spiritual energy around the altar. Since it is hard to always live on the square, the compass helps us circumscribe or limit ourselves and our wants, particularly when we extend ourselves too much. Imagine one arm of the compass going down inside our bodies to the floor, down our spinal cord and our legs to the floor. Then the other arm extends out and draws a circle around us, giving us a boundary that will help us regulate our thinking and activities. For example, too much of a good thing can be harmful, and too tight of a boundary may not give us enough challenge for growth. The square and the compass together help us with this, and our progress can show up in this picture of the Egyptian jackal-headed Anubis weighing a person's heart against a feather. We can learn to limit our heart's desires. Tracing boards are used in Masonry to illustrate the symbolism of each degree. They date far back into history and were used to display architectural plans and explain principles. Originally, they were covered with wax and figures were drawn into the wax. And then when no longer needed, the wax could be scraped off, remelted, and added back to the tracing board so another drawing could be done. The ease of wiping clean the tracing boards served the Masons well because the Roman Empire time, when Christianity opposed pagan rituals, Masonry went underground. The architectural plans on the tracing board made it so the group of Masons could have a reason to meet. Then if they were caught doing anything related to Masonry, the tracing board could easily be erased. The first degree tracing board of the apprentice contains a lot of symbolism, and I need to refrain from explaining too much, but you can see the black and white floor and the duality in the sun and the moon at the top and the altar. The second degree tracing board is that of the fellowcraft, and the staircase is curved upward to indicate that the initiate ascends and must turn his attention away from the material world to that of spirit. And then the third degree tracing board is that of the master mason, and the coffin and the skull and crossbones refers to the death of the personality that becomes before rebirth in spirit. And my pendant is from my father, who was initiated in 1938 as a master mason. Lastly, symbolism in Masonry is beautifully demonstrated in its working tools. The tools of an entered apprentice are included in the box of tools that contain all the tools. And because they're displayed so well in these pictures, I've decided to describe them using these. So the entered apprentice tools are the 24-inch gauge, and that starts at the top of the box, and you can see it's a 24-inch ruler, and it's broken down into 8-inch sections. And that represents the 8 hours of the day that may be used for work, and then the 8 hours of the day for labor, and 8 hours for meditation and study. Then the second tool is the chisel, the gavel and the chisel. And if you remember, the rough ashlar is smoothed by those. The gavel or the hammer is near the top of the boxes, and the chisels are below the hammer in the box on the left, directly below the hammer. And in the box on the right, the chisel is just below the pencils, which have the red edges on them. The gavel symbolizes an outgoing force that puts energy into a situation. It puts force into the chisel to remove unwanted parts of the stone. For us, it is our intuition that sees what is needed to be removed. It's our conscience. The chisel on the other side, or at the other end of it, represents the passive force that gives resistance to the blows of the gavel to make form. It is the developed intellect sharpened by education, which is a prime factor of the fellowcraft degree, and is guided by our intuition and conscience for penetrating self-examination. That's our minds. And this results in discretion and good judgment. The working tools of the fellowcraft are the square, and you can see those in the boxes that I've described, and then the plumb or the plumb bob. The square keeps us acting with integrity, and the level, and that's on the bottom, and that looks like the symbol of a candlestick from the side. And that's the level, and it means that we are all created equal. We're level with one another. The plumb bob is a lead or metal weight that can hang by a string on a nail, which can create a vertical line or a perpendicular. And it stands for uprightness and justice in our actions with others. So you can see it as it is the line where the masonry comes together with the bricks, or the man is laying it at the top of the wall. The working tools of a master mason are the pencil, the compass, and the scarret. Now, the pencil is on the far right of the gold box, and it's in the silver tools below the compass, which is closed, and the pencil has the red ends on it. And the scarret is the reel of string on the right of both boxes. I'll get to that with the picture in a minute. The pencil means that we need to keep track of what we do in our lives, for the lords of karma are writing everything down for us. They are referred to as scribes. Masons give credit to the principle of karma, and as the craftsman receives his wages representing his karma, he knows they are always just and right. As I mentioned, the compass is the tool for the third degree Mason, and it gives us boundaries and how much we do of anything. Then the scarret, it's a tool made up of a reel of string that can be made into a chalk line, and it represents the straight line of righteousness where we restrain ourselves from making poor choices. So hopefully these Masonic symbols and the meaning of the ritual have inspired you too to live on the square, to chisel away unwanted qualities within yourself, and to widen your compasses to greater spiritual development. Thank you.